So in this video, I'm going to do more practice on angles, and these problems will really involve solving for measures of angles, and some of them will involve algebra to solve measures of angles. So it says, use the following information to answer the questions. So measure of angle 1 is 30 degrees. Find the measure of angle 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so measure of angle 1 is 30. We can see that angle 1 and 4 make a straight angle, and a straight angle always adds up to 180. So therefore, the measure of angle 4 would be 180 minus 30 to see what is left over to get the 180, and that's 150. So the measure of angle 4 would be 50. The measure of angle 2 would be the exact same thing. We would just be using this line here. And so 1 and 2 make this straight angle. So the measure of angle 2 would be the same thing. 180 minus 30, which is 150. Okay, and then let's fill those in. So this is 150, this is 150. Okay, and then to get 3, we can use either 2 and 3 or 4 and 3. They both form a straight angle again. And so to get the measure of angle 3, we would do 180 minus 150, and that would give me 30. Okay, and so that's how we find our angle. So if I know one angle and I have two intersecting lines, I can find all the other angles with those two lines intersecting. So if our measure of angle 6 is 20 degrees, find the measure of angle 5, 7, and 8. Okay, so if we look at 5, we need to think about 5 and 6 and their relationship, and they form this straight angle, which again is 180. So to get the measure of angle 5, I would do 180 minus 20 and get 160. And so the measure of angle 5 would be 160. 7 is going to be the exact same thing because angles 6 and 7 also form a straight angle. And so I do 180 minus 20, which is 160. Or you can just say, okay, I know this is 160 since it's the same idea as 5, and that is 160. Okay, now for 8, we know that 5 and 8 are supplementary. They are going to add up to 180 because they form that straight angle. So the measure of angle 8 is 180 minus 160, which is 20 degrees. So this one would be 20. Okay, and you should be able to see kind of a pattern with these. So anytime I have two intersecting lines and I create what it's called these vertical angles. So remember, vertical angles are the angles that are across from each other when you have two intersecting lines. So if we need to identify them, measure of angle 1 and measure of angle 3 is one pair of vertical angles. Okay. Another pair of vertical angles is measure of 2, and the one that across from 2 is 4. And then in my second diagram, another pair is 5 and 7, since those are across from each other. And then the last one is 8 and 6, because those are also across from each other. Okay, so if we look at these angles, we should notice something about all of them. So 1 and 3 are both 30 degrees. 2 and 4 are both 150. 5 and 7 are both 160, and 8 and 6 are both 20. And so what we can see is that vertical angles have the same measure, which is also known as congruent. So what we know is that vertical angles are congruent, which means they have the same measure. Okay, or they're equal is another way to say it if we're talking about their measure. They have equal measures. Okay, and this is a very important property that we are going to use throughout the course. So please make sure that you know that. Okay, so then some practice with supplementary and complementary. If it says find the complement of the following angle, 50 degrees is complement to. So complement again means that the two angles add up to 90 degrees. And so we need to figure out kind of what is left over to get 90 degrees. And so when we are thinking about that, we use subtraction. So we can just do 90 minus 50, which is 40. And so the complement would be 40. If we're talking about find the supplement of the following angle, okay, supplementary angles are angles that add up to 180 degrees. So we have 108, we need to figure out what is left over to make 180. And so we would do 180 minus 108. And that gives us 72. And so the supplement would be 72. Okay, so just remember, complement is always 90 degrees and supplementary is always 180. Now we're going to do a few problems with algebra. So we want to find the measure of x. So we're looking at what is the relationship between the angles and what do I know about them. So these two angles are the ones that are across from each other. And so they're vertical. And we said, okay, we know that vertical angles are congruent or equal. And so that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to set those two angles equal, and then I can solve this equation. So when we solve an equation, we get the variables on one side and the numbers on the other. So I'm going to move 2x over by subtracting it. And then I get x minus 40 equals negative 10. And then to solve, we are going to add 40 to both sides and get x equals 30. So that's how we solve if we have expressions in vertical angles. Now, number 2, we have 6y minus 10 and 6y plus 10, but these are not vertical angles. These are two angles that form this straight angle. And so these two angles are supplementary. Okay, which means again that they add up to 180 degrees. Okay, these were our vertical, was our pair. And vertical means that they're equal or congruent. So when I want two angles that are supplementary, what we do is we take those angles and we add them up to 180, because that's what we know. We know that these two measures together are going to give us 180, and together is the operation of addition. Okay, so now we have like terms on the same side. So I'm going to add together the 6y and the 6y, and I get 12y. And I'm going to add together the negative 10 and the positive 10. Well, that's just 0. So I just have 12y equals 180. And then to move the 12, I divide both sides by 12. And I get y to be 15. Okay, so that's an example of 2 with algebra.